game point, I'ma win it, baby. They switching teams, are you with me or against me, baby? They all talk but don't hear me, baby. They think they know, but we switching up the theory, baby. Yeah, get low, girl. I see you playing like you at the Super Bowl, girl. Yeah, you super throw, girl. And with that swag, we can take over the whole world.
How you doing, everybody? You know what it is. It's the Make Your Point radio show on Right On Cue Radio with your boy Damian James. I want to start today off with some NFL. Talking about that boy Dak Prescott. He recently got his money finally after a long, drawn-out saga with Jerry Jones. I'm super glad they got that resolved and they can go back to playing football and getting their team figured out because, honestly, they had really no choice but to sign Dak Prescott. I mean, the options out there are so unproven. Dak is only getting better. They got Kellen running the offense. They got all these guys in the wide receiver room that are just ready to rip and run. I think that defense has something to prove next year because they honestly really haven't been living up to some of the marquee players and their big contracts. Speaking of big contracts, like I just said, Dak just got his money. So let's break this thing down. The contract is for $160 million for 4 years. $160 million? That's insanity. Especially considering that Dak Prescott is 27 years of age, about to be 28, I believe, which is incredible. That's just crazy money. And he gets $66 million just to sign on the dotted line. This is probably one of the best contracts in American sports history, if not the best one, because not only does he get $66 million upon signing, he actually gets $75 million total if he plays through the whole year, in year one, and that's an NFL record, along with that signing bonus being an NFL record as well. It's so crazy that the Cowboys would take this long to get him signed, only to give him like the biggest and best deal that anybody could get. It's also crazy that they gave it to him off of just a 5-game season where he broke his ankle, I believe, and really had to sit the rest of the season out with a really gruesome injury. The craziest part of all of this, given what I just said, is that even if he gets cut after playing for 1 year, he's still guaranteed $95 million. $95 million. I mean, at this point, there's a reason that Dak Prescott's talking Super Bowl, and that's because, honestly, at this point, that's what it has to be. And he has a no-trade clause and a no-tag provision, which basically means in 4 years, if he and the Dallas Cowboys aren't, doing another extension for a crazy amount of money, he's free to go wherever he wants and play. True free agency. And Dak honestly got a lot of benefit from this, but it's not like he did not try to help the Cowboys out as well. He actually would have counted for $37 million on the cap had he decided to move on or play under a tag. He now accounts for $22 million under the restructured deal, so they can use some of that $22 million to go find defensive players, because in my opinion, it's probably the weakest part of the team right now. Couple moves here to fix it. I mean, there's cornerbacks getting released by teams like Casey Hayward and other people that you don't expect to see on the free agent market that they could possibly give some of that money to and make some quick fixes on the defensive stuff that they're actually struggling with as of late. Let's get back to Dak. Dak played in 5 games in his last season before his season ended with injuries. Although some of those games were really close, the Cowboys only won 2 out of those 5 games. So think about that. Dak was actually putting up some great numbers, and maybe some of it was in garbage time, and maybe some of it was in blowout wins or whatever, but he was on pace to set some new personal records, if not NFL records, with the way he was throwing the football. So I think if they tighten up their defense, and if Ezekiel Elliott can stop fumbling the ball, they can really make real big plays behind Dak and win some football games in a division that's really, really easy, to be honest, as of right now, because only the Cowboys have a clear-cut number 1 quarterback that we know can throw the ball down the field, and he has the weapons to go with it. and people on defense that are good. They just have to put it all together. And maybe it was just being in first year under Mike McCarthy, and maybe the Cowboys just need time to gel. Their defense honestly cannot be anything close to what it was last year if they want to be successful. Let's get back into this Dak Prescott and wrap it up on this topic, because a lot of people have been saying, does he deserve the money? Does he not deserve the money? Is he better than such and such? For me, I don't think it really matters if he's better than Deshaun Watson or the people that are getting more money, like Patrick Mahomes. I think it matters what he means to the team that he's on, because that's the team he's going to have to be playing for, and that's the team that's going to have to deal with, whether he's good or whether he's bad. But I'll say it like this. Dallas scored more points in Dak Prescott's final fourth quarter, 24 points against Cleveland in Week 4, than they have in 3 games combined without him, 22. Those games were against NFC East teams. The Washington football team, the Eagles. Come on, man. Those are both rivalry games. And Dalton playing 11 games and during the season, and he only got like 300 more yards than Dak Prescott was able to pull off in the 5 games he played. So when he left, you could just see the teammates, the coaches, everybody just lost all the air in their sails. And I mean, come on. Dak put up 1,800 yards in 5 games, and Andy Dalton had 11 games to prove himself and put up 2,100. Everybody was ranting and raving about how the Cowboys had the best insurance policy in football when they signed Andy Dalton. I even thought it was a good move, to be honest, because it just, it seemed like Andy Dalton was being held back in Cincinnati. And maybe he was, maybe he wasted his best years on those teams that were real close to perfection, but he did not look good. And maybe it was just, Mike McCarthy's new regime. And, I mean, the offensive coordinator was awesome. Their passing game was great. But other than that, their offense was pretty bad. And not only that, they were third in a division where the best team barely, won, I think, 7 games. So it was just like, I don't think that was what the Cowboys were going for and what Jerry Jones was going for when they had Andy Dalton inserted into the lineup. So now looking back on it, I'm sure he's not mad to overpay Dak Prescott for his services, because it's just, there's nothing that they could do. The ink is already dry on that contract. The money's in the man's bank account. So that's my opinion on that topic. NFC East, let's stay there. I cannot believe that the Washington football team just let Alex Smith go without even, kicking the tires on him in the quarterback competition, or just giving him the starting spot and seeing how he did the first 3 games. That would probably be the most reasonable. He was a big cap hit. Taylor Heineke played good in the playoffs, but I don't know if that's enough to trust him with the keys. Maybe they're going to make another quarterback move here soon. I just think that, I don't know what they're thinking. Alex Smith went 5-1, and it was an amazing story. It just seemed like the team didn't have him in their plans, regardless of what he did, and that's how he felt. Those were his words. Probably because Riverboat Ron took over, and, he wants to make the team his own. And I don't know, man. I just think they need some stability over there. Their defense is awesome. They could be one of those 2000 Ravens teams, or, one of those teams that won the Super Bowl with a quarterback that wasn't the world's best quarterback, but they had a ferocious defense. And if they could get a running back over there in Washington, they can put together a defense and a running game. And those two things really are what I feel like the main recipes to most championships teams taking home a championship. So I thought they were kind of wild for not at least letting Alex Smith come back and try to play. And Eagles are being kind of wacky at first, and they were telling Jalen Hurts that there would be an open quarterback competition. Like, at first I thought, man, could this situation in Philadelphia get any worse at the quarterback? But they are determined not to make it better and to not win games in an easy division right now. I'm really happy that the owner is not shooting himself in the foot and being like most owners and just letting personnel and your GM or whatever make bad decisions. He said no. Stepping in next year, it doesn't matter if Jalen Hurts is the quarterback of the future or not. everything we do should be centered around making this kid the best we can make him, so the Philadelphia Eagles have the best chance of winning football games. And I think it's smart because that division is for the taking right now. Hurts looked very, very promising in certain games, and they just need to go watch tape, find out what he did well, and try to build around that and put some pieces out there. Because let's face it, nobody's winning in this league as a quarterback without pieces, without skill players, and without a line. The battle's always won in the trenches. I used to hear that when I played football. I played high school football, nothing big. But our coaches would always say games are won and lost on the offensive and defensive line. And I think that's really, really true. And if Philadelphia can somehow get those together and Jalen Hurts can pull off some, dual threat magic, I think they might have something over there in Philadelphia. Right now, I think really Dallas has the best team because the Giants, they're just kind of meddling right now. They could be a dark horse if Daniel Jones could get some help out there and get some offensive line so he's not running for his life, falling down midfield. He can actually be pretty dynamic. He reminds me a lot of Josh Allen. I think he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time with the Giants, in my personal opinion. The NFC East is probably the most interesting to talk about for a couple of reasons. And not only because they were super duper awful. I mean, you could win that division with a losing record. What I liked about that was their playoff race was so tight and was down to the last game. And right now, besides the Giants, nobody really knows what the heck they're doing at quarterback, except for Dallas. They just re-signed Dak. But the Eagles, they got to make him feel like his job is not constantly on the line. That's like the most important thing. Because if they don't, I don't know how that's going to translate into any winning football for anyone. They need to get it together over there because the window for the NFC East will be the team that figures out the quarterback position, and it will probably win the division for a lot of years. So, I mean, right now that's the Dallas Cowboys. Unless Heineke's some revelation in Washington, but I really don't think Washington thinks he's a long-term solution. But he did play better than any QB versus that Bucs defense in the playoffs. And when I mean anybody, that includes Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, and that's in the postseason. So he does deserve a shot. I think if he can do a full 16-game season at close to that level, better watch out for the Washington football team because their defense is amazing. If the Cowboys continue what they're doing right now, I think that they probably win that division next year. They're just doing good as far as like morale because everybody's cheering on Dak. I mean, people are taking less money, restructuring their contracts on the defense. So, yeah, that's my NFC East prediction. I want to get into the next topic, and that is free agency. Last time I was on the air, I talked about J.J. Watt and the multiple trade destinations that he could go to and that he was talking about going to. And boy, oh boy, was everybody wrong. J.J. Watt threw us a curveball. Now, a lot of people are saying it was just for the money. I could probably see that. I could also see that there is something promising happening in Arizona with the Cardinals. They are definitely making some interesting splash moves. And let's go ahead and get into the J.J. Watt signing. So he chooses to join up with Chandler Jones and Vance Joseph in the desert, which is cool. It makes sense from a certain standpoint. And that's the money standpoint, like I was saying earlier. Why go play somewhere cold and uncomfortable for less pay? Doesn't make sense. A lot of people would say Super Bowl or what about the Cardinals not being a winning team? But Kyler and company play a lot of really close games, and I mean really razor-thin games that they could have won without all those penalties and bad defensive plays. So it's really, really up in the air with this team. So if you put it in perspective, the Cardinals were one of the top offensive-rated teams, and their defense was 12th in the league with a lot of points. That's 2 spots away from being top 10. So I believe adding J.J. Watt, he can solidify that defense. And if they solidify that cornerback position, that could potentially make them a top 5 defense. And their offense is already up there. And they're already a top red zone team as well. The only real problem that they have is that they're in the shark-infested waters of the NFC West. It's just such a killer division who just added Matthew Stafford as one of those quarterbacks. If they lose Russell in Seattle, then that's kind of like a buffer and an offset to gaining Matthew Stafford. And I think the division becomes significantly weaker. Not only does it become weaker, but the Cardinals actually surge up to being the best team in the division, given San Francisco doesn't make any huge moves during the offseason. Right now, since both players have been in the league, nobody's gotten more sacks than Chandler Jones and J.J. Watt, and now they're on the same team. Now, don't forget, the Cardinals were 12th, and that was without Chandler Jones for most of the season. So if Chandler Jones was in there disrupting, I'm sure some of those plays would... I'm just sure games would go differently because Chandler Jones is a game wrecker. I feel like J.J. Watt he's only 31 years old. You know, Houston was got this weird cloud over it, and maybe that negative type of franchise that, Houston was, maybe that made J.J. Watt more limited. And now you can see him more happy. You see his social media. He's in Arizona having a great time. So maybe, the fun and the, having Chandler Jones on the other side of you never hurts either, to kind of lessen the load of what you got to do. And there still will be, hopefully, guys like Jordan Phillips and other guys on that defensive line that can go make plays. So I'm pretty excited to see J.J. Watt in there. He also brings that veteran leadership. And, it never hurts to have that, because the Cardinals seemed like they were really, really lacking discipline last year. And a lot of it fell on Kyler Murray's shoulders. And I think having another person in the locker room outside of Fitz, because Fitz might retire, and Fitz is Larry Fitzgerald, for those who don't know who Fitz is. If he retires, then we got J.J. Watt as kind of the same type of person in the NFL. In the NFL, we got certain guys that are like those type of guys. And I think J.J. Watt is definitely cut out of the same mold as Larry Fitzgerald. So he's great to have leading that team, kind of like guiding people on that defense to be more professional and more, if some guys are not passionate, which it doesn't seem like it's the case in Arizona. It seems like it's a very passionate team. But I'm sure J.J. Watt can turn that fire up a little more. Let's turn our attention off of Arizona for a little bit, and let's get it on to a team that was super, like Arizona, super hot starting off last year, but ended the season with a lot of bad play that really led them to, flame out when everybody thought that they were going to take the whole league by storm. And the team I'm talking about is the Pittsburgh Steelers with Big Ben. They just recently re-signed Ben Roethlisberger. He's taking a $5 million pay cut. He's going to be making $14 million, which is the same number as Cam Newton, Superman. And that's funny because the Patriots are in a similar situation at quarterback with Cam Newton. And I say that because while Ben Roethlisberger may be slightly a better quarterback numbers-wise, they're both at the tail end of their career, and they're both actually being used as like a transitional bridge quarterback at this point, with the hopes that maybe they can have one of those prime caliber years given the right situation. But where they differ is that the Steelers have weapons. I mean, real weapons. And they were a playoff team last year as well. Ben Roethlisberger, he was a big part of that. He looked really awesome in the beginning of the season, primarily week 1 through 10, where he had a passer rating above 100. But they were honestly facing less than great teams and winning a lot of very close games that could have gone either way. So I can see how it's easy to make a strong argument for the Rooneys and Tomlin to bring Ben back, especially if he's trying to do a cap-friendly deal. They just got to figure out how to keep this team together, because I really think that if Ben can pull it off, they can figure out a system that, is based around whatever they were doing for those first 11 games last year, and try to, draw back some of the mistakes that they made in the last 6 games. I think bringing back Ben and trying to have him get a Super Bowl and run off into the sunset makes sense. But it's going to be hard to make a case to do that if they don't retain Juju Smith-Schuster. You got to make sure you get Juju Smith-Schuster locked up in a contract, or just let him go and figure out what you're going to do, because you don't want to start another AB situation in Pittsburgh. Juju Smith-Schuster, I think he's ready to go himself. He was on the Bret and Hart show on ESPN, Bret and Hahn show, on ESPN about a month ago. And he said he would definitely consider coming back to the Steelers. Overall, it just sounded like he wanted to play with a good quarterback, though. And if Ben didn't come back, it sounded like he wasn't going to come back to Pittsburgh for sure. So, when he asked if he had a list of teams, he said he was waiting to see where QBs went. And that it was chess. And he had a couple chess moves if certain scenarios played out. And that would be a possibility. And they also asked him about Deshaun Watson. And he said, yeah, that's one of the chess moves I'm waiting to see where he would want to go. And I'm paraphrasing, so these are not like direct quotes, but if you want to see exactly what he said, go watch the interview, ESPN, Bart and Hahn's show. But it blows my mind that he said it's chess, and he's waiting to see where the QBs go. And if certain scenarios played out, that could definitely be another possibility if Ben, didn't work it out with the team, or if that was just a good enough move. He said he built his future and his foundation with the Steelers, but it needs to be rebuilt. That does not sound good. Doesn't sound good at all. If it needs to be rebuilt, then it means that something was broken. And if something was broken, then I think since the Steelers have drafted 4 straight wide receivers in the last 4 NFL drafts in the second round, I think it's just like, you gotta cut your losses, because if Juju Smith-Schuster realizes that the Steelers aren't going to give him what he's worth, what he wants, then there's no way that I don't think they can make a deal, because he's already said, I want to get paid what I'm worth, and I'm sure there's a handful of teams that would give Juju Smith-Schuster a top number 1 receiver contract, whether it's the right decision or not. Just because he has produced. He has hit 1,400 yards in one season before. That's insane. I don't care who you have lined up next to. AB, D-Hop, whatever. It doesn't care how many people are targeting that guy. If you can still pull off 1,400 yards, you're not just some random scrub. So I think Juju Smith-Schuster is right in a certain way. But also, I don't think Pittsburgh is in a rush to get him out of the door, so I don't think that there's like a reason to be so let me get out of Pittsburgh-y, unless there's stuff going on behind the scenes I don't know, which is like 99% of the time. Now, I did say he did crack 1,400 yards in the season, but that wasn't last season. He didn't even get over 1,000 last season, and a season where they were like 11-5 on the season. And I know Ben Roethlisberger started playing pretty, badly in the last 5 or 6 games. He was doing well in the first 10. So for Juju not to crack 1,000 kind of hurts his argument when he's on the free agent market, especially mixed in with all the antics and the off-the-field TikTok stuff that people are now bringing up as a counter case against Juju or something. But I just think that he is not having a good year because the situation is unhappiness. For instance, whenever I worked at call center jobs, I would always be excited about it at first. I'd go to the training, I'd get the money, and we'd have a great year together. I'd kill it in sales, blah, blah, blah. And then I started to realize little small things that irritated me about the place. And I started noticing how they valued favorites overvalued, people who are actually contributing to making the company a better place. And, you start getting that disdain of, like, almost taking the place for granted, although, you used to really love it. But it comes to the point where, maybe the place was taking you for granted. And I think that's how Juju Smith-Schuster may be feeling right now. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him, because he kind of rescued them from the AB saga a little bit by being their, like, kind of leverage guy with AB, saying, yeah, you can go do whatever you want. We got Juju Smith-Schuster here, and he just gave us 1,400 yards, so do what you may. So I can see that. I can see Juju wanting AB-like treatment, because I'm sure AB got things that Juju Smith-Schuster probably will never get from the Steelers, and he was a way more about the team person, And I think now he saw what that got him, as far as like money and stuff, and saw, as far as AB's, it still worked out for him in the end because he was still able to grab a Super Bowl. I just think that Juju Smith-Schuster knows in the back of his mind that team can't win right now, and I mean they cleared up the quarterback spot because that was a thing for him for sure. I think he really likes Ben Roethlisberger, and he likes the fact that he wouldn't have to relearn everything, and Ben knows when he's breaking, Ben knows when he's cutting, Ben knows everything that he plans to do. So as far as like football routes and stuff like that go, they've been with each other for 4 years or something. But yeah, I just think that it's funny when you see him on his Twitch stream joking about being on the Chargers and dressing his player up like a Dolphins player, on the video games and stuff. It's kind of, high alert for the Steelers because Juju Smith-Schuster doesn't seem like he wants to be in Pittsburgh anymore. And actually, he voted that's a negative. I think it's Caitlin O'Toole of Sports Illustrated. She did a poll on her Instagram, and it's like, will Juju Smith-Schuster be in Steelers uniform next year or something like that? And the options were, that's a negative, or I hope so. And Juju Smith-Schuster himself voted that's a negative. So if they're going to do anything, try to run back that 11-5, or try to, be real competitive in their division next year, they really need Juju Smith-Schuster, in my opinion. And I just don't think they're going to have him. I want to end it off by talking some MMA, some mixed martial arts in the UFC. We just watched UFC 259 go down and 260. I want to talk about Israel Adesanya losing that championship fight. I don't think that losing that fight really dims Adesanya's star because, let's be honest, he barely lost that fight. The takedowns were what sealed the deal, and I think it was enough to actually say that, Izzy didn't win the fight. But let's be real, Izzy looked good, and Izzy looked like he was going to stop that man on his feet in the 4th round. But mixed martial arts is just not a boxing match. It's a complete grapple, strike. You got to outthink your opponent, and you got to be strategic, and that's exactly what Blachowicz did. He got him to the ground, and he kept him there. I mean, he had probably a 20-pound weight advantage on fight night. So it would have been very, very odd for him not to do that. I mean, for people being mad at Jan for, being a mixed martial artist and using his ground game, it would be like expecting a basketball player to only shoot threes and not shoot layups or mid-range shots just because they're good at shooting threes. You know what I mean? It's like, no, basketball's more than just shooting threes. You have to dribble. You have to, pass. There's other elements to it. So I think that this is a good learning experience for Israel Adesanya. He can go, either bulk up or just become a super crazy, wrestling person that can get up easier. He has to figure out a way to get up easier, some escapes. There's a bunch of things in jiu-jitsu where you can use your hips to get into different positions. So maybe he can study some stuff along those lines to make sure that whenever he gets down, he can get up. I hate to do this to poor Jan because every time he fights, I feel like we end up talking more about the other person. Even if he beats them, we're still like, well, they just lost a step that match, or, it wasn't really that bad on him. Yeah, Jan won, but when did we stop doing the buts for Jan and give this man the proper respect that he deserves as a champion? Because let's be honest, he's beat some tough guys in a division that really was just delegitimized by John Jones getting up and leaving. And honestly, he's kind of stabilizing it and becoming a champion, that's actually, worth his salt. And, we got to pump our brakes because he hasn't fought anybody really for the belt besides Dominic Reyes at 205. And, that was both of their chance to get the belt. It wasn't just his chance alone. So let's see what he does when he's against somebody in his own weight class that he's not going to have, 20 pounds over. Because let's be real, if Adesanya weighed the same amount as Jan, he probably would have beat him up badly and got him out of there within the second or third round. But that didn't happen. And so we can't keep the memory of what Izzy would have done in an alternate universe. We have to go by what actually did happen. So that's how I feel about that fight. It was super close going into the 5th round. Those takedowns did it. 205 champ is Jan. But I do feel like he doesn't get his proper respect. And, sometimes we have guys like that. I mean, Stipe Miocic, now he gets the respect after being DC again. But, after those first 2 fights with DC, I don't think he was getting that respect. So, speaking of respect, we got Aljamain Sterling and Peter Yan. That was a very interesting fight. I thought that the fight was close. It was a competitive fight, and Aljo still had a chance to win the fight. But I just don't think that would have happened. I think Peter Yan was breaking him, and I hate to say it because, I guess I was a fan of the whole Aljamain ninja mystique. But, yeah, man. I don't mind seeing an immediate rematch for that fight because Peter Yan was winning pretty handily in that round that's the round that got stopped. I'm not going to say he was winning the fight handily because I don't believe he was winning the fight handily. He was winning the fight in my opinion, and it could have still gone either way, but he was breaking that man, and Aljo would have had to dig really deep to win the fight, which is super possible, so I wasn't counting him out because Aljo, I think, has the skill set to eke out a submission even if even if he's getting beat up. So that fight was not over, but the way it ended was very trash, for a better lack of words, and I just think that Aljamain Sterling posing with the belt and asking to skip past Peter Yan and go fight Henry Cejudo is kind of crazy. And it looks like we ran out of time, guys. I would love to keep talking MMA with you, and I'm going to start talking MMA more. But this does it for this time. Don't forget to go listen to other shows on the Right on Cue Radio Network. Have a great day.